You can have the best equipment in the world, but if your people do not have the competences to really use that equipment, you will not get good product and you might even get into pretty unsafe situations. So this is where the training and education pillar comes in and takes the reins. Hello, I'm Tom. Welcome to my channel where we talk about continuous improvement in an industrial setting. And this video's topic is the training and education pillar. So how do we make sure that we have competent people and that we know what they can do and perform effectively in our factory? Now, the main goal of this pillar is to, again, really integrate learning and development, training and education into our continuous improvement mindset, into our organization. And for that, it is very important to know what the role of competences is within your performance. And so one of the first things that the T&E pillar will do is to make sure that you know which competences are actually required to operate your factory. And this might sound like an open door, but in many factories it is only half-heartedly known what you really have to be able to do in order to work effectively. So making sure that you know which tasks have to be performed, which skills are needed for those tasks, and how do people need to understand what's happening in order to efficiently work and produce in a very stable way, that by itself is already the first task of the training and education pillar. And for this you use such tools like workplace assessment, task breakdown, critical point within task analysis, to make sure that you put onto paper what is really required to be able to work at a specific workplace. And then, of course, the next part will be to check or assess how our people are living up to those expected competencies. So in other words, are our people as competent as we need? And when we see a gap, this is where we put a training plan into place and make sure that we develop and then train and again reassess if now our people have the proper competencies that we require to have a good and stable production. Now, one of the very important factors for any part of business, but especially also for training and education, is that we make sure that we fit it to the needs of our operation. So we should not be training for training's sake. We should check where will enhanced training and improved competence really benefit the bottom line. Better production, more efficient, more stable quality. So operational performance should drive where we invest in more training and competence building. Now, when we go into the improvement tools that the training and education pillar will support, we have 4 of these, which is to have basic training facilities and, let's say, the training structure in place, to focus on workplace training. So this is the operational work, the standard operating procedures, and how you get that into place. Then the same system of knowing what you have to do and what the skill package is for the non-production workplaces. And I would say advanced training and education pillar is really getting into where are our method man losses. So where do we lose on performance or quality or safety because our work standards are not correct, or because they are too difficult to understand, or maybe our people are not trained or not trained in the correct way. So where can improved competences and maybe a bit of motivation really help to increase our performance? That is, I would say, the most difficult part of training and education, but it is also that part that will yield the highest results. So what are these training systems and facilities that we speak about? Well, one of the things you really need is a standard way to train people that come in. So you need to know, how are our instructions and our training programs set up, and how do I make sure that some new person entering our organization gets all the needed trainings, is assessed, and only then gets assigned to those workstations. Maybe you already have this in place, but there is a very big chance that this system is not working very smoothly and is also not driven from your operational needs. Then, of course, there are all these small pieces of information that might not really fit into this or that instruction, and we would often solve this by having a one-point lesson. So you have one topic, you make a small instruction about it, and this you then teach to the target audience within your organization. For these, you also need a dedicated system. How do you make sure that those one-point lessons get spread throughout the organization, and also that you take them out of circulation again? because in the end, the knowledge should be within your standard operating procedures or your instructions, and a one-point lesson should be seen more as a temporary fix. A very important one, and also a very nice way to periodically get some extra attention for specific parts of your instructions, but not the basis for your training program. Now, what could also be a serious boon to your organization is to have real training facilities. So to make sure that you have some e-learning rooms that are nicely equipped, that are spread throughout your factory, so that your operators and other staff can use them during shifts or directly after. That you maybe have also an online environment where people can learn from home or from the office. And for many types of industry, you would even like to have a very physical type of classroom where you can practice with parts of machinery or parts of control that you will see in your factory. So that, for instance, people know how conveyor belts work, how pistons operate, how to work with different types of sensors, and have this in a sort of a practical teaching setup where you can more easily explain what's inside, what is good, what is broken, how do things work, how can you perform certain quality checks of your equipment. For this, having a classroom with some spare equipment set up in such a way that it's easy to check how it works and how it should work is a real blessing. This may take some time to put together, and of course you need some space for it, but it almost always pays off to have such a physical classroom. And the next part of training and education is that you have your workstation trainings all in order. And what I mean by workstation here is all the equipment and the work that you would plan an employee into for a shift or for a day. So if this is one production line where you are planned in, and if you are planned in there, you are expected to know every part of the production line, then this is one workstation. Now, to get this system up and running, there are 6 steps to follow. First, you identify which workstations do we have and what are our requirements for training on all of those workstations. Then, for a workstation, you identify what are the tasks that the operator has to be able to perform, and within this, which are the critical steps and why are they critical. People who are familiar with TWI or training within industry will understand why these are so critical. And then the third step is that you actually prepare instructions, training materials, so that you have this whole program of how you will teach this workstation to a new employee or somebody coming in from a different workstation. Then you will also need trainers and assessors. So you have to make sure that for each area in your factory, or actually for each workstation, you have a number of trainers and people who can assess the quality of the training and the competence of a newly trained employee. And the fifth step is to actually train. Now, this might sound very simple, but for this, the whole system needs to fall into place. You need your trainers. You also need the planning that both the student and the trainer have the time to really do the training, to have those assessments, that you talk a bit with management, that there are checks in place. So this is also a whole process that needs to be developed and coached in practice. And then the sixth step is to assess the training process itself. So can we improve our training, our assessments, and maybe even the work instructions themselves? So really also continuously improve the training itself. Now, here we've been talking about workstations, and I really meant your operational workplaces. The next step in the training and education pillar route is to do almost the same, but then for your non-production functions. You can imagine that your planner, quality officer, safety officer, team leader, janitor, receptionist, they are very different jobs, and also quite often you only have 1 or maybe 2 or 3 people in each of these jobs. They are not as standardized as your operational jobs. So this requires a different approach. Very often you will not want to completely write out full instructions and assessment programs. What you do want to do is that you have a task list for each of those functions as well, so that you at least know which competences and which skills do you need to transfer when training somebody new, or when making sure that you have some flexibility in your labor pool. So it is a light system, but also a lot broader scope, because you have lots and lots of functions all over your factory. The same principles do still apply though. You determine which workplaces you would like to train when and how much importance do you give to each of them. what are the tasks and the critical parts in these tasks for a workplace, then training materials you do need for some of the subtasks, and you will probably have a number of trainings that you already have available. Which of these would you like to put into an introduction program for a new employee? Then you need some trainers, which are very often the people working in this function right now, but perhaps for a number of specific skills you have different types of trainers. You actually train people when they come in, and also here assess if this whole training program for new employees or people moving within your company is effective and how it can be improved. And then we get into a very important part of training and education within our continuous improvement culture, and this is to check which losses we have due to man or method failure. So when are our work standards not stable enough, or perhaps not clear enough to guarantee stable production and good quality at all times? And one of the tools we already know from the quality maintenance pillar, which are the 5 questions for 0 defects, are also very useful for the training and education pillar, because they really check the quality and stability of a standard. So how easy is it to set a parameter? Can we check if it is correct? Does it deviate during production? Can we actually see when it starts to deviate? And how easy is it to correct these deviations? And what we also need is an efficient way to check how well people are performing up to their standards and how well they have understood their training. So we can do this with periodic reassessments of the whole training package, but also very important for the training and education pillar is to really link into our process confirmation. Because with process confirmation, we check if people put the correct parameters in place and if they really follow standard operating procedures, if they understand what they are doing, and we get this direct feedback, and also which standards and practices are implemented in such a way that doing the right thing is actually the easiest way of working. Because if you remember our pyramid of standards, where you have no standard, written standard, and it goes all the way up to a Poka-Yoke foolproof system, the higher you get in your pyramid, the less discipline and also the less organization is required to always perform in the same stable way. And this guarantees our quality and our stability of processes. Now, to really assess the quality of our training and our competence building, we will of course want some learning and development specialists within the training and education pillar. And it's also very important to have some shop floor managers or the trainers and assessors that actually train our operators in the pillar to get this direct feedback. What works, what doesn't work. And since there is such a very strong link between training and education and all of the other pillars, because they all really rely on the quality of our training system, you will probably want a continuous improvement expert also in the training and education pillar, even if you no longer have CI specialists in most of your other pillars. So to recap, the training and education pillar should really focus on where training and competences contribute to effective and qualitative production. No training simply for training, but you train in order to improve your performance. You want to build training facilities, both the organizational layer as well as e-learning, physical training, and the actual tools that people use to train. Then you first focus on your workstation training, so the operational trainings, because this is the heart of your factory. After this, you expand the system to also include most of the other functions and specialties and your specialty roles, so that you get a stronger organization that is more resistant to personal changes. And at some point, and this might very well be directly from the beginning, or you take it a bit later, you will also focus on the man-method losses in performance deviations and integrate capability and competence-based thinking into your production performance control. So I hope you are now very motivated to really include this competency building into your continuous improvement organization, and that you took some ideas from this video and got a better understanding of the training and education pillar. If you liked it, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. For now, I wish you the best of luck setting up your training and education pillar and making sure that you get this competency way of thinking into your organization and really strengthen this training culture. And as always, enjoy that journey.